Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Austin Buff, who will be speaking on Workday Adaptive Planning. Austin?
Hi, thank you. My name is Austin Buff, and I'm the practice director here at NeoSystems for Workday Adaptive Planning. What I'd like to kind of take you through today is exactly what Adaptive is and how it can coordinate with your ERP system, whether that's CostPoint or another system. As for me personally, I have about 8 years of experience exclusively implementing Adaptive. Prior to that, I worked in several different positions within government and nonprofit finance. So I was happy to come to NeoSystems to be able to kind of bring all of those things together. So I don't have any slides. What I'd like to do is just kind of head straight into a demo, and we'll talk through exactly how Adaptive can help you in your planning and analysis moving forward. So let me do this. Okay. So what you're seeing here, this is kind of a typical landing page. This is where, you know, when you sign into Adaptive, you will end up. Just a few kind of things about the system to begin with. First of all, it is 100% cloud-based. It was created in the cloud. It's never been an on-premise system. It is cloud native. It is a full multi-tenant solution. So once you purchase and implement Adaptive, every new feature that comes down the pike and that sort of thing is automatically included in your system. You don't have to worry about versioning or making sure that you're on the right version, that kind of thing. They do updates about twice a year, major updates about twice a year, and then they'll do security patches and that sort of thing more frequently. Essentially, what Adaptive is a series of sheets which create financial models which then flow into creating a whole budget. What you're looking at right now is what we call a modeled sheet. This is a personnel sheet that we've created for our demo company here, and as you can see, we have a bunch of different people that are allocated to different organizational levels within the organization and different accounts. We can also take this down to different projects within each of these levels, depending on how your particular organization is fixed. And so you can see we have different accounts here, and based on the data that populate these accounts, there are calculations happening in the back end that then calculate things like hours, the different types of PTO they're earning, the compensation, their cumulative comp for Social Security, so we can figure out their Social Security tax, workers' comp, all those sorts of things. And so all of these different things that are being calculated can then go to different parts of the income statement, and we'll show you that kind of how all that comes together in a minute. But really, from a high level, the reason I like to start off with the personnel sheet is this kind of shows the basic functionality of the system, and that is we can create all sorts of different financial models that are at some points very granular. For example, looking at building up your personnel model from actual, not only individual people, but where those individual people are allocated within different levels, different organizational levels and projects. And then it's from these individual pieces that we roll everything up into a either an income statement or balance sheet, which then rolls into a cash flow statement, and we can get reporting and that kind of thing from there. Now, Adaptive is called Adaptive because all of these elements that we have available to us make it very, if not easy, then very functional to create whatever kind of of model you want. For example, we can create something that's pretty complex like this, where we're tracking people by the percentage of time that they are projected to spend in a certain organizational level or project or PLC or that sort of thing. And we can also create something where we plan, instead of by the employee, named employee, we plan by the type of position. So if you want to plan by headcount, by type of position, we can come back a step and plan at that level as well. And this applies to other parts of planning expenses or revenue, like if you're planning capital, if you have a lot of capital projects that that maybe have a lot of multiple pieces, that you want to be able to show that, hey, these 3 stages of this project roll up into this, and part of this is going to be depreciated this way, and part of it won't be depreciated for another, year or so. All of those are types of models that we can create that then end up flowing through to the income statement and beyond. Now this one, I'll show you, this is a, you'll notice that this is personnel. We also have a personnel new hires sheet. Very, very similar, except employee names or new hires, that sort of thing. One of the reasons you might want to have these types of things split out like this is the personnel sheet here. This may be seated or integrated with another system, whether that's CostPoint or Workday or another HRIS or something like that. So we can set this up so that this can this could be imported data and this could be manually input data, or we could have those on the same sheet. It's it just depends on what your process flow is and how that works for you guys. Next, I want to come to show you, this is a product revenue sheet. This is a simple one we put together. We have different products we've got running down here, and then for the different levels, we can have different inputs, and you would input units and revenue and cost per unit, and then it's going to give you total revenue and total cost, and then this itself ends up going into flowing into the income statement, that kind of thing. Now here we're inputting units and revenue and cost, but all of these things can be calculated also based on prior actuals, or based on a trend line that maybe you figure out from somewhere else, and you see you want to see this trended out over a year or 5 years or something a certain way because of how you are interpreting your industry and how it's working. But this is another place where we can create these sheets, these little models that then flow up into a large model. Now, something that'll be interesting for all of you is when we look at different cost pools and how we create allocations and fringe based on those cost pools. And the way that works here, this is a sheet we've got going, and you can see we've got different fringe allocations and service center allocations. We have facilities, IT, that sort of thing, and you're seeing this at kind of the top level. If we go down, so you're seeing everything that's flowing in and flowing out. If we go in and we just pick a different org, and for those of you on CostPoint, you'll recognize our org kind of nomenclature here. Let me go down to actually mass. So you can see if we go in and we zoom in on one individual org level, we can see exactly what's being allocated to that org level based on the data that's coming up from the top. So for this one, they're seeing fringe in this particular fringe pool, where they're not getting fringe from other pools, and of course that would depend on what they've got coming in and coming out. We do this by creating a series of account and level attributes, and so we can go through and tag different accounts and different levels with the with the different pools that they may be flowing into and out of. And obviously, if somebody wanted a far more in-depth demonstration of how that works and had some questions about that, we'd be happy to set up a time to talk to you individually. But so we've got, we have costs, expenses like personnel, which could be direct or indirect expenses. We've got some labor coming through. We've got it allocated out, and it's like, okay, well, all of these pieces are working. Well, where do the data flow next? And so we would look at our income statement, and so here we can see, we've got like direct labor. These numbers are coming in from the personnel sheet where they're being calculated. Here we have travel costs coming in. These may be coming in from a travel model that you have created. If you're trying to project out, you want to say, hey, I've got, if for this particular org, we've got 5 trips we're going to take next year. Each trip is going to have 3 people, and then we can have some assumptions in the background that move that out, and either smooth it out over the year, or we could have it plop those into specific months if when you're going to be traveling, that kind of thing. So what the income statement then does is it brings in all of these different elements for the different levels. And so, here we're looking at the whole company. But again, if I go down and I look at a specific division, what we're going to see is the data just for that division. And so you can see what you've got coming through just for that division via expenses or revenue or that sort of thing. And then we'll, we come down and for this particular division, we see the net income, EBITDA, if that's a metric that's meaningful to you, that kind of thing. And those, all of those pieces, how you're calculating EBITDA or even your net income, that sort of thing. If you have a special way of doing that, all of those formulas are customizable, just you, configurable, I should actually say, just for your organization. Then we have these, what you're looking at here, these are our balance sheet drivers. As we model out a balance sheet, particularly in this industry, a lot of times we want to make sure that the assumptions we're using to model out the balance sheet, the drivers that we use for that, are easily configurable and easily changeable, depending on your organizational level or your company. If you have multiple companies rolling up into a single entity and you want to be able to control their balance sheet drivers per company, you would do that based on something like this, where you come in and you can manipulate the different percentages, or if you want to change the mix of AR that you want to drive your balance sheet, and anything that can happen here. And then I'm going to open up the balance sheet real quick. And then that flows into our balance sheet, where you will see, then you've got your basic, basic balance sheet, assets, liabilities, equity, and then we have some checks down here to make sure that we're all, balancing, and so we can see this flow through. Now we do have a way of very easily and quickly doing an indirect method cash flow based on the balance sheet. That's what you see here, and so we've got our net income coming in, our adjustments, and this utilizes that same kind of attribute infrastructure that we're using to move data through the cost pools, and so we can configure this to however you guys are used to forecasting cash flow. But you can see we can just by putting in the drivers, we can put out our see what our cash flow is going to look like in the future, and then plan on that. And if we're going to end up in the negative like here, we're going to have to to do something before that happens. And so you get those types of wording. Now that's the basic kind of, more granular models roll up to kind of larger models, roll into the income statement, to the balance sheet, to the cash flow statement, that kind of thing. One of the things that makes NeoSystems unique is we are used to using and integrating with the ERP systems that GovCon clients typically use. First and foremost among them is CostPoint. That's what we as a company use. That's what we have, spent a lot of time creating integrations to. Now, if you know anything about Adaptive itself, you'll note that Adaptive actually has several different pre-configured data sources that it can bring data in from, things like NetSuite. I'm working with a client right now that uses NetSuite. Things like NetSuite, Intact, obviously Workday, those sorts of things. They do not have a pre-configured client for CostPoint, so we've created one, and so now we've got one that we've used over and over again and can implement pretty quickly. This one's very, very simple. We actually have the adaptive demo system hooked up to receive information from one of our CostPoint demo systems. There's only 2 tables here because we're only bringing in some pretty high-level data here, but these are actually, what you're seeing these are data tables that exist in CostPoint. We've created this JDBC connector to be able to pass data directly from CostPoint into Adaptive. And then you go into these different loaders and you can see we've got an FTE loader for personnel. We've got a couple of GL detail brings in transactions, GL summary brings in balances. We can also bring in data from other systems. If you have an HRIS, like ADP or Workday or something like that, and you want to bring in your personnel data from one of those systems, we can bring them in that way, or we can, just connect to your ERP system and bring in data from there. Also, we can create data sources out of spreadsheets. So if you have, if you're figuring out something on Excel and you don't want to move that modeling into Adaptive, but you want to bring in the data, we can do that as well. 2 real quick things before I ask one of our clients to kind of talk about how they're using the system. Again, all of this, so we come up with these great data. We've got our planning. We're looking at a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan, that sort of thing. How do we consume it? One of the things you're looking at here, this is an income statement by month, by line of business. This is a report, what we call our web reporting that we're using. And just so you see, manipulating the web reporting is pretty easy. There's a sign here where all of this is just drag and drop. If I wanted to change the time span or any of these accounts or anything like that, we can do that. The web reporting, however, is not all that formatable. So we have a product that comes with Adaptive called Adaptive Office Connect that will basically connect your Adaptive data to an Excel spreadsheet, which gives you some greater formatting. We also have a dashboarding program. All of this is part of the system. One of the nice things about the dashboards is not only can you set up these nice looking graphs, and you can get obviously a lot more complex than this, but all of these, you can see how we've got our revenue takes a hit here, but so do our direct costs, which is what you would kind of expect to see there. But I can actually click into these and, start, looking at this by different factors, different dimensions that already exist within the system, and it kind of leaves yourself breadcrumbs as you go through these dashboards. Same thing for these pie charts. We can look at all of these as I mouse over them. They're giving you different pieces of data. We can also dive into these and drill down to get the data that's meaningful. One of the things that the dashboards is really nice for is creating dashboards for your executives so that they can go in and drill down and answer a lot of their own questions without having to come to you to find out that information. You can also create kind of a walled garden around the dashboards where people can go in and they can drill down and see whatever they want to see, but they can't change any data, which also can be very useful. And pretty much everybody who's made a budget knows what I'm talking about there. So, so that is the system kind of in a nutshell. Happy to take anyone through a deeper dive on that if you would like to contact us and set that up. But what I would like to do right now is to introduce Barb Honkus, who is who's a client of ours with Stevenson Technology Corporation. I won't go too much into detail. I'd like her to kind of explain where she's coming from. She is kind of at the tail end of an implementation of Adaptive, but I'd like her to kind of introduce herself and her organization, and then Barb, if you could just kind of take them through how you're using the system and what you've found out about it as you've been going through the implementation process and starting to use the system. So without further ado, I'd like to present Barbara Honkus.
Thank you, Austin. I appreciate it. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. I'm with Stevenson Technologies Corporation, and we've been a client of NeoSystems for several years. So we've been using CostPoint and Deltek. And I think some of the other products that you mentioned on, we use Integrify and UltiPro, most of the services that NeoSystems offers. But we've been in a growth spurt continuously, and our program manager really needed to have some other budgeting tool besides her Excel spreadsheets. And so we reached out to NeoSystems and they recommended Adaptive. And so we've been working very closely with NeoSystems, I think since the tail end of October 2020. We really got into the nuts and bolts, I would say, in December of 2020. And they are soon going to let us loose with Adaptive. But our program manager, as I mentioned earlier, was working a lot with spreadsheets, and it was getting very cumbersome. And we wanted something that would was directly related to CostPoint, because that's where our information is retained. But our need was very specific from a program management perspective and not from a corporate management function. And so we've been working very closely, and there's a variety of things that I do like about Adaptive and with NeoSystems, in that they are client specific, and they are very thorough and rigid with creating plans to get your goals situated and achieved by a certain time frame. And our goals are really wrapping up around the 1st of July. We want to be fully functional with Adaptive. And so we're doing everything that Austin had disclosed. They've uploaded our GL, and we're working on creating a variety of reports and flashy items with dashboards. But it's client specific. And we love it because it's going to pull the information directly from CostPoint that we no longer will have to upload and input and modify. The only thing that we have been requested to keep manually is the personnel sheet, which is it's not a big deal. We're manipulating our personnel data on a monthly basis anyway. And so that's just going to be another feature that we're going to add into our process. But we're anxious to kind of be able to go on our own and see how we can function independently with Adaptive without NeoSystems, assisting us as we've been marching along the last 6 months. I really like it because they do address our needs. It is specific to the entity. We have special requirements. They are addressing those requirements. They're very good about the calendars that they keep to ensure that everyone's on target with the objectives that we really need to meet by July 1st. So far it's been a good experience, and I'm sure we'll encounter another experience when we're working kind of independently without the training and the guidance that we've been receiving the last 6 months.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Barb. Appreciate that. Checking the time, looks like we're just about out of time for our segment, but I did want to open up and see if there are any questions for us right now. Also, if you guys think of a question later after our segment or something like that, just be sure to put it in the question queue, and we'll get back to you as we can. But I did want to see if there are any questions, or and if not, then Dawn, I think it's back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb.
Well, thank you, Austin and Barbara. That's a great presentation, and Barbara, some great feedback about how you're using the Workday Adaptive Planning platform. And we've seen the cloud-based platform as a real game changer for GovCons of all sizes who are looking for an easier way, but yet more collaborative and more transparent budgeting and planning process.